And I give the call to the member for Werriwa.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move the motion relating to volunteering in the terms in which it appears in the notice paper.
And the member for Werriwa has the call.
Thank you. Over the past few years, Australians have collectively experienced some of the most challenging times in decades, from once-in-a-100-year pandemic to several once-in-a-100 years natural disasters. And unfortunately, these challenges don't seem to be in the past. We've recently seen the devastating flood events that inundated large parts of the Kimberley in Western Australia and the bushfires raging across Queensland. Recovery efforts for these will take months, if not years. Whilst local, state and federal governments have a role to play in assisting those who experience difficult times, it really is the volunteers throughout our community that provide that immediate and ongoing support to those who are most vulnerable. And whilst they don't volunteer for recognition, they absolutely deserve it. From an economic perspective, volunteers provide almost 600 million hours of voluntary work in 2019. Whilst the exact estimates of how much this equates to for the economy are difficult to quantify, it's certainly billions of dollars. And that's purely economic. Socially, it's invaluable. Each of those hours, someone volunteers by delivering food, cleaning our waterways or environment, fighting fires and assisting during national disasters, and coaching our children makes such a difference to our community. Unfortunately, volunteer organisations have been severely impacted over the last few years. The casualisation of the workforce and other issues has put increased pressure on organisations at a time when volunteering rates have continued to decline. Since 2014, there's been a 20% drop in volunteer hours. The Albanese government will provide an additional $4 million boost for the volunteering resource centres across the country to bolster their efforts in recruiting, training and supporting volunteers. I would encourage anyone who can volunteer to do so. As someone who's volunteered so much in the past, I know that you get much more out of the work than you put in. Helping people in the community is definitely a rewarding thing to do. And our communities, charities and NGOs depend on it. Volunteering builds social cohesion, increases wellbeing for both the volunteer and those they're helping. And I commend Volunteer Australia in their new national strategy for volunteering. Further, the Albanese government is providing $367,000 to volunteering Australians to assist in the strategy's implementation. Society has changed dramatically since the last strategy in 2011, so it's very important they continue to modernise and update the approach to volunteering and recruitment. And we as Members of Parliament must do what we can to support and raise the volunteers in our community up. In the electorate of Werriwa, I formally recognise volunteers throughout my community. Last year was the 7th year I presented the Werriwa Volunteer Awards. The 2022 recipients were Kirsty Parks, Sharon Pietriano, Cecilia Cabaran, Pam Lawther, Anne Murphy, Michael Stoats, Maria Tonkin, Tessilia Vavale, Jeanette Wilson, Nabil Jambor, Bruce Clark, Chris Darcy and Susan Raya. Thank you all for the incredible work you do in our community. I'll be running the Werriwa Volunteers Awards again this year in May. Nominations will open in the coming weeks. In fact, a former Werriwa awardee was the Australian Volunteer of the Year, announced when the 2023 Australia Day Awards were announced. Amar Singh and Terminals for Australia provides meals and practical support for those experiencing difficulties caused by the economic circumstances or national disasters. And the 2022 Werriwa awardee, Chris Darcy, was Liverpool Council's Citizen of the Year. It's important to bring together various volunteers and organisations, not only to recognise their contribution, but to talk about the needs of our communities and their concerns about how we can help. For those in New South Wales, you can visit the New South Wales Government Make a Difference website, which allows you to find opportunities and organisation based on your interests, whether it's animal welfare, environment, arts, communities or disaster relief. Thank you again to all the volunteers in Werriwa and all around Australia.
And I thank the member for Werriwa.